Welcome, everyone. This is our third episode. Today we have Faith Taylor with us. Would you like to give a little introduction as to who you are?
Sure.
Someone you're meeting for the first time?
Yeah. So, as you've said, I'm a mother, wife, a sister, a daughter, and my journey has been one of just, I would say adapting and changing and being resilient over the years, and going for my passion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like really just making sure that I just love what I'm doing, and I've been blessed that I've been able to do that. It took me a while to get to that point, but but that's
as
with most, right? And so I come at it from an interesting background. Is that I was born in Japan,
Okay.
and my father's African American and my mother's Japanese, and he met her there. He was in the military. And then I moved to the United States when I was 5. So,
do you remember coming for the first time at 5?
Yeah. It was. Because I had broken English. My mom was not fluent in English at all, and we moved to Tacoma, Washington, Seattle, Tacoma area, where there were a lot of kids like myself on the military base, where a lot of the people were from all different parts of the world. They were Scottish and Irish and Black and Spanish, and it was weird, the world on the military base, which was crazy.
Pot.
Yeah. So that was good. And so where I grew up in Seattle, Tacoma area was very, very much so. I had, a huge Japanese population there, of women who had married military men, and so it was a very interesting background to grow up there in that area. So that was the beginning of my love of the environment, because grow up in Tacoma, Seattle area is very much environmentally focused.
Right.
It rains all the time, so you play in the rain, you camp in the rain, you do everything in the rain. But it's very much about the outdoors and loving your environment and things. So it was an awesome way to grow up.
So that was a big stepping point for you. It was just arriving in Washington and getting assimilated with your surroundings.
With the U.S. And learning English. But it was good because I was in kindergarten at that point. So it was a good time to learn. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and ended up going to college in California and Philadelphia.
Did you make a pit stop in New Jersey, or were you always around?
Well, it's so funny. I didn't think I was going to live out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so right after business school, I had actually a job between Apple Computer and Time Warner at that time. And I said I would never live on the East Coast again. So I decided to take the job at Time Warner. And it was so funny because within 3 months I met my husband and have never moved back.
Yeah,
so that's crazy,
it's
right?
One of those cases where you were where you needed to be.
Exactly. So you never know. That's I think you have to be open to change and open to what may happen.
Now you applied to Stanford. Is that? That's where you did your bachelor's.
Yeah.
What made you want to apply to Stanford? Was that just?
Well, the way I got to Stanford is an interesting route because I first went to Occidental College out of Washington State and got a full ride there. And I ended up, which I didn't know that Obama was also there. And then I transferred my junior year to Stanford and finished my education there in psychology and economics. And I didn't know what I wanted to be at that point. What
was that experience like for you?
It was great. I love the campus because it's very much one of, you ride your bike everywhere. It's warm. From Seattle to Tacoma, it rained every single day practically, right. So it was great. It was intellectually stimulating, in terms of, there's so many bright people there, and they had a great program in terms of African American students staying at the Ujima House. That was, when I grew up in Washington State, I didn't have that collective of people. In fact, I was one of the few African Americans in my class in high school. So to go to this campus and there was a group of, African Americans, I was like, wow, this is really good. And my sister was there too, Debbie,
and
she was on the athletic scholarship. She was on the basketball team. and I did theater arts and music while I was there.
So you had a variety of interests.
Yeah,
while you were there.
so we were at different ends of the spectrum, but we had a lot of the same friends.
No, but while you were deciding what you wanted to do, what was that experience like of just kind of figuring things out, figuring out a path for yourself?
Well, that's a really good question. So I first started with psychology and I added economics because I felt like I should understand something about business. And, I thought I was going to be an industrial psychologist. And I took, a job working for Lockheed and helping them do some, psychological testing of people in the company and things like that. And I really didn't like it. It was like a summer job. And I was like, oh, I don't really like this,
What kind of turned you off?
I was sitting in the office and there was no creativity, what I perceived to be creativity in the job. So I ended up, and this is funny, Stanford is an engineering school. They have a lot of engineering majors. Mm-hmm. And I took a basic programming class. And then when I graduated, I actually got a job for Fireman's Fund helping them doing programming, which, can you imagine? I'm a psych econ major. I was like, and so I helped them do some, it was very basic programming in their area. And then Delphi Systems, I got another job in LA. So that was, and in LA, I was doing the accounts receivable subsystem for the Port Authority of San Diego. And by my second year, I said, I am not techie, I'm not engineering. And I decided to apply to business school, and I got into Wharton, and I went. So, it was like, case closed. But the reason why I applied, I wanted to do something creative, so I decided to major in marketing.
Right. I saw you did marketing, but you also had an entrepreneurial background there too.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there, they had a very strong entrepreneurial program, and that was awesome. Mm-hmm. And so I did a minor in entrepreneurial management as well as a major in marketing. And I really enjoyed marketing. It was creative. It was still Wharton's a very analytical school.
Right.
It has a very strong finance background. In fact, people are like, you should be going here if you want to be a finance major, but there was mm-hmm. quite a few of us who weren't. And they had the Wharton Follies, which was the group, the MBA program there puts on this parody of the latest songs and does a whole play about a parody about Wharton, and alumni come back. They've had it for years, and so I participated in that, and that was a blast. And most of the people in that were the creative types, the film major, the music major, all getting their MBA, so that was great.
You found that as a group that you were
that was a
easy
group
to connect to.
Yeah, so I think it's important to find your group, mm-hmm. your tribe while mm-hmm. you're at school, because people that you relate to, whatever your creative outlet or academic outlet or whatever it is, find those people that you connect with while you're there. It makes the experience much better.
Right. Do you find that I know there's a quote that says that you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or along those lines.
Right.
Do you find that to be true with your experience there?
Yeah. So, it's at Wharton, that was true. It was a group of friends that, it was not academically based, but it was more like, to this day, I have dinner with the Wharton Follies friends from there.
And
so we're still friends.
You still connect with.
Yeah. So we've stayed friends for many, many, many years, and everybody's evolved, to very different things. We all do very different things, but it's been great. So yeah, that really helped. Mm-hmm. And then from there, what was interesting is that the jobs that I took. Some jobs I liked and some I didn't, and that was great because it's funny, even with my own children, I say, you may not like all of your jobs, but the good news is when you have a job that you don't like, you'll learn what mm-hmm. that's what you can check that one off. You don't have to do that anymore, and you can start to do some other things. I'm a big believer of going after your passion, but and work ethic. Mm-hmm. You have to work hard for no matter what you want to do.
Right. Now, how are you able to connect that with the students of today, like even your students? How are you able to tell them in the classroom that you should follow your passions and have work ethic with that?
Yeah. So a lot of times I don't actually say that. I just talk about the process what you need to do while you're in a job, and the kind of work that you need to do to be able to show that you can demonstrate your skills. And I talk about how you work with people, how do you ask for resources, what do you need to do while you're there to prove that you can do marketing or corporate social responsibility. And then I think by just talking about the process and how much work it takes to do it, I think they realize that it takes a certain amount of work ethics, because I'm like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that. And they're probably like, wow, that's a lot of work. I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So in fact, I just did a class today on marketing research, and I said that's the foundation of how you make decisions. Mm-hmm. And I give examples of when I use marketing research in my own experience and the process I went through. And I think when I talk about that, they realize the work that's involved. And so that's, I think through demonstration is better than telling somebody you should work hard.
Right, exactly. Where do you think that you developed your work ethic from? Was it something from growing up, or was it something that in the classroom?
Definitely my parents. I think that you do, and relatives. My mother was very much about education and working hard. In fact, because my mother's first language was not English, I used to help her clean people's houses. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
how old were you then?
I was 12, 13,
so it's,
14.
You were working from a young age.
Yeah, very young age.
Yeah.
And then because her first language wasn't English, I also would help to pay the bills. Yeah. So, we'd sit down at the table and she goes, okay, read this one. Here, write this check. And so I'd help her because, her first language wasn't English. And she said, I learned the discipline of paying your bills. I don't know that kids learn that today. No, you don't,
Now you just click it on your phone.
I know. I'm like this. I'm like, okay, and do you have enough money in your account?
That's only
to pay. No.
That's only when you want to look at the app. You don't want to look at the balance.
So it was, I look back at it now and I said, wow, that was a great experience, right? But I didn't think it as a kid. I'm sitting there like, oh my God.
It was almost as if you were teaching each other in a way.
Yeah.
So creating that bond that really helps.
Yeah. So my mother, that work ethic, helping her clean people's houses, do that.
Yeah.
My father, he have a whole year where he went to work every single day, even though he was in the military, and did not have a sick day.
Really?
No sick day. I was like, how do you do that, Dad? You're not sick at all. I don't believe it.
Was there any reason why he chose to do that? Or was that
no,
just
he
the work
just,
ethic
that's his own work ethic. And so I think both of those, they're not academic, but it taught me that, you got to follow through. You got to,
You could definitely tie it in.
Yeah. So I look at those experiences as being fantastic. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the students that I teach here, I understand maybe first or second generation like I was.
Right.
And, I was very fortunate to go to some great schools. And, I look at everyone and say, you can do it with a certain work ethic and discipline.
And that's what will separate you from other candidates.
And it does in the long run. It does.
So now while you were at Stanford, you graduated from Stanford, and then you went to Wharton. And you graduated from Wharton. And your first job out of Wharton was at Avon? Or
no,
at Time Warner?
It was at Time Warner, okay. Sports Illustrated magazine.
Sports Illustrated. Now, I know I was telling my mom about this, and she's a big fan of People magazine. You were involved with People magazine too, is that right?
Yeah, I was. That's so funny. Yeah.
What was that experience like?
It was great. So, but what I was doing there was they call circulation marketing. Mm-hmm. So I was marketing the magazine. And at Sports Illustrated, it's funny because today I was talking about data analytics. So I would do these huge spreadsheets on subscription models, okay. And people who were buying Sports Illustrated magazine, right, mm-hmm. on a yearly basis, on a 3-year basis, and then how much it costs to produce the magazine, and then how much do we cost to market the magazine, right?
Right.
And I was in shock at how much financial modeling I was doing. And I was there till like 10 and 11 o'clock at night.
Especially, going into
trying to figure out, like, okay, if our response rate went up to, you know, 0.5%, what would that do in terms of the overall revenues that we could generate? I mean, it was just like, I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
And it was great discipline for now when you talk about data analytics and understanding how to read a spreadsheet or data.
Mm-hmm.
But the fun part was, and I remember at Sports Illustrated, is that we developed premiums. So if you gave a premium away, you know, a free product away, you could get your subscription response rate up, or people would buy, versus a 1-year subscription, they buy a 3-year subscription.
Right.
So we created, and I'll never forget this, it was a telephone made out of a football.
This was your idea?
It was a group idea.
Right.
I don't want to take full.
No, I understand.
So it was a football telephone. That
I can only imagine the meeting that you were in.
No, but the premium blew out. Like, people wanted this premium. They were like, "That's so cool."
Who wouldn't want to talk on a football?
So by using that football telephone, we were able to increase the, you know, revenues. I mean, significant response rate.
Now, what were you thinking
increase.
when you first heard that this was happening?
No, well, it was funny because we would test. So you would test multiple products, right?
Right.
So one would be you get 2 free magazines if you bought a year subscription. You know, you extend your subscription 6 months. You know, and then we tested various products and things. And this football telephone was so far off the charts in the test that we ended up rolling out with it. So, and I'll never forget that, because that's a crazy product.
Right, but I'm sure at the time that was something that
it was very novel.
Yeah.
And it did very well, and it was more creative, which I really liked.
Right.
So I was there for 2 years, and then I got the opportunity to go work at Avon.
Mm-hmm.
And Avon, people were like, "Ding dong! Oh, you're going to be selling products door to door."
And that's what you hear.
That's what you hear, but I was in the corporate office doing marketing, and it was traditional brand marketing, and it was very creative. It was a blast, actually. I ended up staying there 10 years.
How was the transition from going to Sports Illustrated to Avon?
Well, it was funny because they liked, you know, I came in as an entry-level marketing manager, and they liked my analytical skills. And they thought it was creative because of the, you know, football telephone, and so the program with Avon is interesting. You have 2 stakeholders you're selling to: the Avon representative, right,
Mm-hmm.
who's selling this catalog filled with all these products,
Right.
to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
the end customer. So you had 2 people you were selling to, and so you were managing and selling to the Avon representative
Mm-hmm.
and to the customer.
Okay.
And that catalog, every 2 weeks we had a new catalog, and a certain percentage, about 70% of the products in there were new products, and the 30% was existing products that they kept selling over and over again.
Probably had the best sales rates.
So I was involved with marketing, and marketing was the hub that created all the products that went in there,
Mm-hmm.
managed all the existing products, figured out the sales incentives and how to publish that catalog, which was, I forgot how many millions we were publishing. I don't know if it was 5 to 7 million every 2 weeks, to their sales representative. And then at the same time, making sure that end message in the catalog resonated with the customer who was actually buying it. And then we also would do advertising that went along to the customer about the Avon representative, the products that we're doing. And it was like on steroids. Every 2 weeks, you had to have so many new products. So you were managing the products that were going in. You had creative people who actually designed the products. You manufactured the products. You had to do spreadsheets to say how much your sales were.
Right.
The P&L management. And so it was an incredible training ground for how to develop new products and programs from scratch, and then market them on an ongoing basis. Yeah.
Now, when you were at Avon and you were working every day, how was that lifestyle of taking on that amount of work and taking on that challenge?
You know what? It was not always easy. because it was a lot of work, but I enjoyed it so much that it didn't seem like work, right? Because when you're creating products and that whole creative side, as well as developing new business models, it can be, to me, it's invigorating, and I found kind of my place, in terms of, so, I got to, start new, a whole new jewelry and accessory business, that they were only doing cosmetics and fragrances and bath and body, and I really helped to develop the jewelry and accessory business, and we started out of Canada and ended up going to China to bring in those products to sell in the catalog,
Right.
And created them from scratch as well. We have manufacturing facilities in Puerto Rico, to, actually, like, here's, these different products that we were making, and that was an incredible experience too, developing fragrances and a jewelry line, with celebrity endorsements. That was a lot of fun as well. And learning how to do licensing with Disney. We did Disney watches, and they sold like hotcakes because, Disney is such a hot brand, and children with Disney characters on it love it. And so I was developing products and businesses that we were selling, and it was making a lot of money for the company, and I was having fun doing it.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it was like, okay, I really, really liked my job a lot. What was challenging was as I had children.
Oh.
and I had my son and I had my daughter, and so, there's, as a mother, it can be demanding in terms of, your child gets sick, and what can you do?
You have a big meeting, or you have.
Oh well, I'll never forget this. I had a presentation at Avon for a very senior executive on the program that I was rolling out, and my babysitter called in sick. So I took my son, who was 8 months old, put him in the stroller, and took him with me to work.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And then, so there were women in my office who said, "You guys have to, can you just take care of him while I do this presentation?" They said, "Sure, Faith." So I just took him in there, went and did my presentation, and rolled him back out. So it was
I'm surprised he wasn't part of the
I
presentation.
know, should have just said, "Here he is."
Yeah. And there you go.
Yeah, so it's so, so I remember that clearly. But I had great bosses who were very flexible with me. It wasn't like we have flex time now. You guys have so much more.
Oh, yeah.
But back then it was like, okay, they gave me that flexibility, which is important.
Right. I'm sure at the time that was something that
a
lot of people didn't have.
They did not. And so that's another reason why I stayed there so long. And then, so it was a great experience.
And hearing that, it makes me want to think and ask that, did you feel comfortable when you had an idea to pitch it, or did you feel comfortable speaking openly within your office?
Yeah, so the one skill I really felt, and I to this day feel very comfortable with, is coming up with an idea and then putting the strategic plan and business plan together and then executing it.
Okay, so always.
And I did it over and over and over again, right? Within cosmetics, accessories, jewelry, fragrances. It was like I just kept doing that over and over again. And so that, but I liked that process, right? So even as I went on in my career, that basic skill set I've used over and over again as I've gone forward.
And while you were there, when did you decide that you wanted to go into independent consulting?
Well, I did that because of my children at that time. So at that time, Jordan was 6, my son, and my daughter was 2 years old. And as you can imagine, I started rolling out programs around the world. So I was going to Europe, I was going to China.
What sparked that?
Because the United States was what we called the lead market. So if I rolled out a fragrance in U.S., we'd also roll it out in Europe, and then we'd roll it out in Latin America. So I was traveling a lot. Okay. And Jordan was 6 and Kiyomi was 2, and my husband's in finance, and he was traveling. Okay. So who was home? The babysitter. and I, we both have very strong family values. And I told my husband, I'm getting off this. I said, I just can't do it right now. I value our family more. And he was like, fine, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. So I did. I just said, I'm taking a break. I'm not going to, do that, and I'll consult. So what happened was people started calling me about consulting and for projects that became huge, right? At that time it was the internet startup, and I helped Puff Daddy, he's now P. Diddy, with the internet company that he started. And I worked on...
Have you met him?
Yeah.
What is he like?
He was, back then, he very disciplined. He'd have his whole team
get up stories about him.
7 a.m. to do exercise programs. I was like, whoa, I'm thinking this rapper. But we were developing the hip hop site online. Okay. And Russell Simmons was also his competitor. And so it was this whole urban, internet. And my experience in cosmetics, I was helping develop this urban luxe. It was called cosmetics line, which made sense, right, from my background. So it was fascinating. It was a fascinating experience. And so I did that for about 5 years, consulting on all these various projects. And by then, Jordan was 11 and Kiyomi was 7. And I got a call from from Ramada, to come and help them with their Ramada brand. And, I said, after 5 years of consulting, the kids now, they're both in school, very independent kids. They're still very independent. And I decided to go ahead and go back to corporate America.
Do you see consulting being something very similar then as it is now, or do you feel like it's changed a lot?
Consulting, it's similar, but it's changed a lot, I think. I think more people are doing consulting today than back then.
Is it because of just...
I think the economy, to me, does not have as many full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. I think there's much more what I call flex, right?
Yeah.
Flex workers, flex time.
Like gig economy.
I think the gig economy is it's different. It's very different.
So being at the time that you wanted to pursue independent consulting, that was probably something that was perceived as a bigger risk then.
Absolutely. People thought it was crazy. Yeah. Oh my God, you're making all this money, and do you know what I mean? Like they're like, oh my God, you're Faith, you're on track to be, I was one of the most senior women there, and they said, Andrea Young was the CEO, and she was like, are you sure you want to leave? And I said, yeah, she was very nice.
That must have been really tough for you.
Yeah, but you know what? It worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out. I think you have to have a fundamental belief that you will get a job that you can contribute and make a difference. And so I was like, you know what? It's going to be fine. And it totally was fine.
And you've taken that with you.
Yeah.
Was there a certain event that kind of brought that style of thinking on, or was that just something that came to you naturally?
No, I think it was just years of working and then seeing the kind of results that I was getting and saying, you know what, I can help, I can add value.
Faith in yourself.
Yeah. You start to get confidence once you have some success in whatever area you're at.
You should make sure to always carry that with you.
Yeah, and so that confidence never leaves you. It stays with you, but it's based on a foundation of working and ethics and seeing the results and moving forward.
Now, for a student that doesn't really know what they want to do, or an employee that's working and says, I don't want to do this anymore, how can you tie that in with what you just said?
So what I would say is that it's okay. It's great and okay to say I don't like this, but don't. You should have a transition plan.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It's like you going in with a strategic plan.
Right.
And you had an idea.
Right. And so, you say, okay, right now I don't like this, but I'm going to start transitioning to this. So what's the bridge to get there? Because, just saying I'm going to quit right now and not do this, unless there's a physical reason or a mental reason or something else where it forces you to do that. But what's your bridge from here to here? And it's okay. It's good to say, I don't want to do this. Because now you've knocked that off the list. Now you can move forward with what you do like to do, And having the patience to do that and the confidence to do that is really important, because it's not going to happen overnight, or maybe it does, which is, wow, fantastic.
Exactly.
But most people, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a transition that happens. Transformation happens over time. It doesn't happen, immediately. So being what I call this resiliency concept is hanging in there when you are believing, but you don't see it yet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so right now you say, okay, don't like this job, but I want to get here, so I'm taking these classes. And then what kind of experience can I get that's going to start to get me closer to where I want to be? Do you know what I mean? So it's a process,
Yeah.
and it takes time, but you got to have that vision, and you have to stay positive.
Mm-hmm.
It will not always be easy. It sounds like, my life has not always been easy. I'm not going to sit here,
No.
there were many times people told me no. And I always tell my kids it's a 10-to-1 ratio. 10 no's to 1 yes.
Right. Isn't that a sales
concept?
Too?
And then you'll feel a little better. Okay, so that's a no. All right.
It's just getting easy with rejection. And knowing that just because you're rejected here doesn't mean there's another opportunity for you there.
And, I am, like when people said I was crazy, even when I started the Windham Green program, I was going to leave the company, and I decided that I was going to go for my passion. And if they didn't want me to do it, then I was going to just, get another job.
You had enough faith in yourself to say that you were going to take the initiative and bring it somewhere else if that's where it wasn't going to be.
Exactly.
Right.
So, but I also understand the sacrifice it takes. You know what I mean?
Of course.
There's a huge amount of sacrifice.
Is different.
Yeah. So, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's all roses. It's not. There are times where you're just like, wow, this is really hard. Why am I doing this? There are times where, people are extremely not nice, have not been helpful. In fact, have done some things that I'm like, wow, I would never do that to you, but that's how you feel. Okay,
Yeah.
But then I'm like, okay, that's your reflection of you. That's not a reflection of me. That's the other thing. Don't internalize what other people, idea of what you should be.
Mm-hmm.
That is to me one of the toughest things that you can learn is how do you learn to stand up for yourself in a positive way and let other people's negativity roll off of you.
Have you ever had an employee or let's say a mentor that had either given you that advice or you had given somebody else that advice?
What, in terms of
during your experience working?
Yeah, definitely. And I saw it more through the leaders that I respect the most demonstrated it. They didn't actually say that, but I was like, wow, I know they're under a tremendous amount of pressure, and I never see them yell at me or you know what I mean? Like they still have a sense of respect and dignity, and even when it's really tough, they're still like, let's move forward, let's, make this happen. And it's this concept, it's funny, that I believe that you learn the true character of people when they're under a tremendous amount of pressure. And how they act under that tremendous amount of pressure will tell you more than anything else. And I've learned that over the years with various leaders I've worked with. And then I've tried to demonstrate that myself, even though I may be under a tremendous amount of pressure. I do not take it out on my team or my boss or my family. Do you know what I mean?
Of course. You think back to what you just said, and you are able to then, kind of acclimate and say, I don't want to be perceived as this. I want to, kind of show what a true leader is.
Right. And it comes down, like you were saying, having confidence in yourself. I have a strong value system on family, respect, communication, staying positive is really important. I'm always reading, and trying to look at the positive things and solutions. And I think it's important to keep that mindset, refresh it all the time, because we are bombarded with, a lot of negativity.
Oh, of course.
And so it helps.
Especially in today's age when you can't really move away from it.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because even in my class on corporate social responsibility, where I talk about the big issues that we're dealing with, and I tell them, don't be depressed. The people who are making a difference and who are providing the solution is why you're taking this class.
Exactly.
We're talking about how do you solve for this? How do you, what's the opportunity out of climate change, out of, unemployment, out of poverty? What's the opportunity?
All of these social issues.
Yeah. So how do we move forward? How do we stay positive? I think we need that more than anything today.
It's kind of deriving hope from what you see externally. You kind of want to bring that in and saying, how can we make the difference?
Right.
If people are out there making the difference, how can we?
Right. And you can do every small step makes a difference, right? So I'm a firm believer in that, and that's how I've tried to live my life. And even the course that I've taken in terms of focusing on corporate social responsibility and innovation and helping to move forward and staying positive has been, it's made me happy, right?
Yeah. And by being happy, you're able to share that with other people.
Right.
And that's how there's growth.
Right.
So now we finished consulting. We're up to Ramada now, right?
Right.
How did you decide to go to Ramada?
They called me,
Okay.
and they were in the red. The brand wasn't doing well,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed someone to come in and help them turn it around. And I'll never forget, her name was Jean Harris, and it was like December just before New Year's, and she called me and she goes, you have a very interesting background. I'd love to talk to you. And I talked to her about it, and she goes, I'm hiring you as of January 6th. I'll never forget that. So,
did you feel like that was structured as an interview, or that was more or less like an introductory
no, it was an
conversation?
interview. She had me come in and interview with her and a team, and she goes, that's it. She goes, they had been interviewing for a long time for the right person. She said, you're the right person. And I'll never forget the first week I got there, they sent me to Canada.
Now I'm interested. What is that type of interview style for that position?
So it was the director of marketing, and it was interviewing with her in terms of the job. Then it was interviewing with people on the team, but then it was also interviewing with a lot of the functions that you had to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the operations team, the sales team, of course that was the marketing team, the finance team. So what was good is that my background in Avon, right, I was working with all the functions.
Exactly. So
I felt very comfortable saying, okay, well, with you, this is what's important. With you, this is what's important. I had been doing that for 10 years. I was very comfortable with that. So they could see that I could work in a very diverse functional area, and then also diverse in terms of they're bringing in the Canadian franchise system, right, and say, how comfortable are you with other cultures? And I was like,
well, we already know that one.
Yeah. So it was a good fit.
Oh, that's amazing. And how did you proceed working there? Like, what was the next step for you?
Well, I just they just threw me in the fire, and I just started. They had me travel to Canada, meet all the people, start putting together plans, which I was very comfortable with. How could we start turning it around? And so I started doing all my research. I started working with people internally to identify the opportunities, work with the franchisees, got to know them very well, gain their trust. I think that's important. People gain your trust. And then work with finance, who was like, we got to turn this around. We're not making money. Work with finance in terms of marketing and how we could turn around. And in 2 years, we turned it around.
Now, I know that, gain your trust and being around a diverse population. These are all interpersonal skills that you have to gain throughout your experience. How can somebody gain interpersonal skills while they're at university or while they're at their first job?
To me, working with on a sports team, working in a fraternity, working in a club, and helping to lead and helping the group to move forward, whatever their goals are, is important, because that's the same kind of skills you have to use in a company where you have people who are in different functional areas, who have different priorities. Some people you like, some people you don't like.
Exactly.
And so you have to work with them anyway, because you all have one goal, despite personalities and et cetera and so forth. And how do you communicate with them despite they may not like you or you may not like them?
Right.
So those are how you can learn those skills even if you don't have the job yet. That's very important.
I know emotional intelligence is like a big buzzword now.
I know, right?
Corporations.
I know. Can you... Emotional intelligence, I totally agree, is very important. But I think the most important piece is how you manage yourself.
Okay. And with you, I mean, you've been managing yourself your whole life.
That's funny, huh? Managing yourself. What does that mean? managing yourself is knowing when to speak and when not to speak.
I feel like a lot of people have that issue.
When to listen and when not to listen, right? And when to get upset or how to get upset and not to get upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people will, and even your own family members will say things that will just set you off. But is it the right time to go back off on them, or is it better time to wait and think about it and come back later? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like those,
internalizing your thoughts.
that's where emotional intelligence comes in, because how you react to that is just as important.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a meeting, I'll never forget this, and this was a very senior executive, and you know, I had done my PowerPoint presentation. He had seen it beforehand, right? And so we were in a huge meeting with franchisees, owners of hotels. And in that meeting, that presentation I had shown him before, he went off on me. He was like, this is a bunch of junk and da-da-da. And I just looked at him and I was like, first I was like confused.
I would
right?
be confused too.
I was like, we talked about this? And then, and I had to just he was like, you know.
In your face.
But he was very senior. Like he could just fire me on the spot.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I just like looked at him. I kept my cool. I answered his questions. I continued the presentation. I finished it. And then I asked to be excused and left the room. And many of the people in the room came up to me afterwards and said, that was horrible, what he just did.
Yeah.
They saw it, right? And it reflected on him because they said, he's a bully. What's wrong with him? Like, why would he do that?
Right.
I'll never forget that meeting. And I went back to him. It took me almost 2 weeks later. I went back to him and had a conversation of why he did that. And I stood up. I was very, and he's like, oh, I didn't mean it. I apologize. I just looked at him and I was like, oh, but it was like, I had to step back. I had to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But so you said 2 weeks later. What made you want to reapproach the situation?
Because it was funny. So he was not my direct boss. And I had a conversation with her about it. And she said she was going to go talk to him, but she was at that level. And I said, no. I said, I have to do this. Because having, you know what I mean? Like I said, for my own maturity, I realized I had to have that conversation with him. I had to be able to, and it wasn't confrontational. I was just really explain to me why you had to do that.
Do you feel like enough people?
It was great.
Do you feel like enough people, not enough people within industries stand up for themselves?
I don't think that happens. And you know why we say that? The Me Too, look at the Me Too movement. Women, you know, you feel totally, and he was a man and I was a woman, so I just felt like, oh my God. It wasn't sexual abuse, but it was verbally.
Well, it's emotional.
Yeah, it was emotionally. And the lesson I learned from that was to speak up for myself. Do you know what I mean? And it's important to speak up, and it's hard. It's easier to say than to do.
Of course,
it's easier to say
it's just
than to do.
Understanding how to approach it from a professional standpoint, right? And I'm sure that's what you did when you took time to reassess the situation.
That's why I had to wait 2 weeks.
I can imagine.
I had to wait 2 weeks. I was like, oh my God, I can't. So, but that was a great lesson.
Do you think that was a defining point in your career?
Yeah, one of the defining points. There was many others, but
yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, look at this. Look how much we've talked about it.
Yeah,
we're not even halfway there.
it's like, oh my God, it's so long. I know.
No. It's so interesting to see where you started from to where we're getting. And,
yeah.
So we're at Ramada now, and I know this is your. I know because you have Windham right after.
Yeah,
that was your next step after that. But where do you see the introduction to Windham as opposed to where you were at Ramada?
Well, with Ramada, I got to work with all my my fellow marketing team, and I was traveling a lot. Again, I started traveling, and I said, you know what? At that point, I forgot how old Jordan was and Kill Me, and I was like, and we had turned the brand around, and I said, you know what? I'm going to start looking for a new job. So I was honest with my boss about it. She was like, you can't look for a new job. She was awesome. She goes, let's talk about what you can do. So she goes, you'd be great at new product development and innovation. And I said, oh yeah, I'm always.
Have you dabbled in that at all?
Well, that's what I was basically doing at Avon.
Right.
For years and years, developing new products.
But did you think that was like the next stepping point for you
So,
as a?
Yeah, so I said, sure. I said, that would be fun, developing new products across all the brands, hotel brands. So they created that role for me to do, and I started doing that role and working with all the different brand presidents and developing new beds and new amenities and new, all these different things for the different brands that they needed. To help them innovate, because if you look at the competition, they were innovating. At that time, you had the Westin Heavenly Bed, and you had all these products coming out, and what were we doing? So it was a great opportunity to do that. So I did that and was making progress, and at that time, we bought the Windham brand. And I worked with a gentleman by the name of Peter Strebel, who is incredible. He's now the president of Omni Hotels. And he was the president assigned to Windham when we bought it. And he said, Faith, you need to come help me do product innovation for this Windham brand. And he goes, because now we'll put real money against it to do it. So I said, sure. And he was fun. He used to walk down the hall and I would just laugh, and he was just a fun person to work with. So
and that made the experience so much better for you.
And I truly believe this. And I've been trying to, when I have fun in a job, I do really well. And I think anybody does, right? When you're laughing and you're getting work done, but you're having a fun time at it, it's really important, right?
Of course. But the question then is how can you incorporate fun into every job? Right.
So that should be the goal, to be honest with you. You should be enjoying your time there. It shouldn't be this like, oh my God, but there's work. I'm not going to lie. Like there's a ton of work that you have to get done. So he asked me to do that. And he wanted to reposition Windham, because at that point they were looking at naming it the entire hotel group Windham. So before it was under Cendant, and we rolled out. So, working with him to reposition Windham and the team, I hired the architect Michael Graves, who was incredible. He had a lot of products in Target, so I don't know if you knew him, but he passed away since then. And we hired him to license and develop a new hotel prototype. All the products that went into the hotel, from bed to amenities to coffee pots to, it was lighting, but when you walked into the hotel, what did you experience when you drove up? Just everything. And so worked with his design team, worked with manufacturing in China. It was using all those same skill sets I had from before to develop all of that. And then we launched it at a hotel show. So they have the hotel show in New York City, and we actually built a room that looked like the bedroom, that looked like the hallway and everything. We bought models, displays, and the sales team brought in hotel owners and people to purchase, and they loved it. And we grew our sales by 200% of the concept. It was just like fun, and it was crazy because the whole I'll never forget, because people were like, you can't do that, you can't do a licensing deal. I said, why can't we do a licensing deal? Why can't we co-develop a hotel brand? Why can't we make structure this so that it works? And we got it done, so it was awesome. And then what happened was that they decided to, we were spinning off from that huge conglomerate Windham, and that was right around 2008, 2009, when we were having that big, we were going into the Great Recession with Obama and everything. Yeah, and I also saw, when I was developing all those new prototypes and programs and everything, that the consumer was going green. And wellness is called Life of Health and Wellness, and it was like a $200 billion market at that time. Now it's massive, but I saw that the consumer was going green, and so I was incorporating that into all of the products and design with Michael Graves' team, because he has a team. And I went and saw the movie Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. My
Right.
son Jordan actually saw it and told my husband and I that weekend that we needed to see it.
Right.
And he never asked us to go see it. So when I saw it, for me it clicked that this is where the consumer's going. And the work that I was doing, I said, oh my God, this is going to be strategic for a company. So I said, oh, we need to do this,
Now,
and
this clicking that you saw when you knew the direction of the consumer from that, is that clicking a skill that you were able to develop over the years, or is that just fate that just reaches you?
No. I think that over the years, what I learned was when you do marketing research and you look at consumers and you develop new products and programs, you have to forecast somewhat what you think is going to happen going forward, and then develop programs and products that you think is going to meet that, right? Because there's a delayed timing between the concept to market.
Right.
And I was doing that over and over again at Avon, because we had to publish that catalog. We had to be 18 to 2 years in advance of the actual product going in the catalog.
That's like predicting the future.
But so we would look at trends, everything from fashion, color, consumer profiles, and we would say, okay, these are the kinds of products that we think is going to be relevant. And that, I think, helped me over the years as I look at things and saying, what do I think the opportunity is going forward? And in fact, I talk a lot about that in my marketing class with the kids.
It's nice to bring those connections.
Yeah.
So now you decided to move on you saw this documentary and you said, I want to make the world green.
I know, right? I want to make, so it was.
Instead of painting the town red, you're going to paint the town green.
I know, right? So there was a step in there where the prototype was, they were like, wow, Faith. And so the chairman, Steve Holmes, said he wanted to start a spa and fitness program across all of his businesses. So I was only in the hotel group, and then they said, let's do timeshare and let's do the rental exchange. He wanted to launch a spa and fitness program across all of it. Mm-hmm. And so I was presented as that I could do that. So I met with him and I said, okay. And he goes, I'd like you to come back to me with a plan. So, I did my research, I put together a plan, and I decided to launch Blue Harmony, at spa and fitness program. And so he gave me 18 months. It was crazy. I was like, oh, in addition to my regular job. So Blue Harmony, spa and fitness program, I pulled it together with a team, hired an outside consulting firm called Gensler, but then worked with a manufacturing group and pulled that whole thing together. And we launched it, and it was very well received. And then that's when that whole greening trend and we were spinning off. And I had a chance to talk with Steve Holmes, the chairman, and told him, you need to go see this movie, Inconvenient Truth. This green consumer, you need to be concerned about this with the company because it's going to be strategic. I said, this is going to be important. And he just looked at me like, I'm starting a new company. I have to develop a culture. Da, da, da. I said, I'm just telling you that, I believe it's going to be important as we move forward. You really need to think about this. So he came back to me about 2 months later. I guess he talked with all the different people and said, I'm going to let you start this. I'm not giving you any money. I'm not giving you resources.
Sure, you weren't even thinking about
and I was like, okay. So I started. Through that spa and fitness program, had met all these people, pockets of what I call excellence of people doing things. So I pulled together a team from across all the business units and said, we're going to start this Windham Green program. He said, I'll endorse it, but I'm not going to give you any money. So I said, fine. So I started it, and then 1 year later, I put together a strategic plan, and I went back to him, and I thought about it, and I said, well, either I'm going to do this or I'm leaving. So I went to him.
Did you say that?
No, this is my own thought process. I said, so I went to him and I said, here's a plan. I want to do it, and I need some kind of resources. So he gave me what I call a very little budget one person to help me, and a administrative assistant, and I started.
Right.
And then 10 years later, it was every year fighting for resources, growing, but the consumer was going there, right? And the brands were going there, and so we called it Wyndham Green, and then it just kept growing globally. It grew. It was important in Europe. I started reporting on behalf of the company. Everybody said, "Why are you reporting?" I said, "We need to be reporting." And then they started giving me more and more responsibility. So philanthropy, human rights, working with the council across all the business units, diversity, privacy, wellness, and working, across developing the strategy, working with the board of directors. Investors were asking all these questions now. It just kept growing. We were winning awards. We were reducing our footprint. The one thing that I would say is that my goal was not to have a program that was winning awards. The goal was always to reduce our environmental footprint, to make a social impact.
Right.
So the first thing that I fought for was a software system, and developing a software system where we could actually track and say that we were reducing our footprint was critical to me. So I fought like really hard to get that resource, and then we rolled it out across many of our assets globally, and it had to come in languages, and then getting the metrics right for what our actual footprint was, and then from there starting to set reduction targets, and then from there starting to actually reduce and document that. That was the first step, and then we started going into water, waste, social programs, and reporting for the company. And because of that, we had a system that was robust, audited by Deloitte and Touche. We had real rigor around that practice. We were able to make reductions of over 45% globally on our energy, and water was down over 25%. And waste was well on its way as well. So,
now, did you know that this strategic plan was going to follow out?
Well, this is the point here. So you can see the evolution of my path was not one of, I was going for my passion. I was leveraging the things that I could do well. And I was saying either I'm going to do that or I'm not.
Right.
And so my job, and in fact, over the years, people were interviewing me, how'd you get this job? I said, it did not exist when I started. I created my job. And they just look at me like, really? And I said, yeah, I really did. I created my job. And that's awesome, right, that I was able to do that. But I look at it as, I keep saying, even to my students here, if you are creating value for a company, right? I mean, if you're creating value for a company, you're not the person they're going to want to leave, to be really honest. And they're going to want you to help them move that company forward, right? If you're the one providing the solutions, if you're the one who's, delivering this value, it's going to be important. One of the hardest things for me was to say that I was going to leave Windham, you know what I mean? But the company, how did I get here, is that the company no longer exists. Wyndham Worldwide dissolved. They spun off one group, sold it. The other group they left in Orlando, the timeshare, and now there's a hotel group, two smaller companies, and I was overseeing the whole program globally. So one of the things I really was thinking to myself, I said, okay, what do I want to do? And a key part has always been giving back. I've been an adjunct professor here it's going on 3 years before I started as a full-time in September.
Right.
And I wanted to absolutely develop the next leaders in corporate social responsibility. And in my mind, our business school is a place where that can happen. I don't know what their path is going to be, but I want them to be inspired and passionate about adding value in their company by using corporate social responsibility, by embedding it into the actual company culture and brand.
Now, if you were telling this to a student that was interested in sustainability, what would you say to them if they weren't in the business school, for instance?
Well, I'm saying the same thing. because this summer there's the green team. I'm teaching my course this summer, open to the entire university now.
Great.
And open and working with the green team out of the CEL program. So it has now become open to more than just the business school because of what it represents.
I can imagine. I mean, it's a growing field now.
Yeah.
And where do you see corporate responsibility going? Like where is the trajectory for it within businesses?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny. I did this thing on the future of corporate social responsibility. It is going to become even more strategic, embedded in business because businesses have to respond to disasters, and they have to respond to unemployment, poverty, disaster, increasing costs of commodities. Oil, gas, all of that is increasing. How do you have a sustainable business with this changing environment? So by using corporate social responsibility to manage environmental changes in your portfolio, increasing commodity costs. So are you using renewable energy? Are you getting your products from recycled content? Because if you aren't and you're not innovating that way, you're going to be left behind. We were just talking about in class today, it was so funny, about growing farm products, and they're developing this technology where you can use salt water versus using fresh water. Now, that's a huge issue in the world. Fresh water supply is dwindling and food supply is stressed. So if you can develop the technology, which they are developing, to grow food with salt water, which we have an abundance of salt water, that's a huge game changer. So taking these threats and turning them into opportunities is where the next new businesses are going to be.
Right. And how can you best connect corporate social responsibility with someone that has no knowledge of it within a business already established? Like, what is the best way to kind of intertwine the two for a better connection?
So I always start with the cost of products and services and the impact from corporate social responsibility on that, and the cost of employing people, retaining them, recruiting them, inspiring them to stay with you, and corporate social responsibility is a part of that. So when I look at I don't look at talking about climate change because most people don't understand that, but they do understand floods that have taken out farm products or impacted livestock, which directly relates to the food that you have on your table and how much it costs, and diseases that are running from these ongoing disasters. So I relate it to the increasing cost of goods that are supplied to our businesses, and people get that, right? And then the other thing is when we talk about employment, the employment of the youth 25 and under. I don't know if you know, and I talk about this in the class as well, that those who are in Europe have double digit, 15, 20% unemployment in certain parts in Europe. And in the United States, it's double digits for those under 25 as well, but we're not talking about that. That's our future.
Why are we not talking about it?
Yeah, so I don't know why we're not talking about that. We concentrate on the overarching, 3 to 4% unemployment rate here. We're not talking about it by segment. I don't think we want to talk about it, but we should be dealing with that. And how are we providing our next generation opportunities for employment? Because that's our future.
Do you see the time between, I guess, passion and purpose to unemployment?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I know with a lot of students that are going into college or deciding against college, kind of deciding how they want to move forward with their life. They're 18, 19 years old, and they're given a decision that can carry forth with them for the next 30, 40 years.
Right.
And with that comes a lot of pressure. How can you address that within corporate social responsibility?
Well, it's an interesting question because how we are educated is changing. And I think that the traditional college education is changing as we speak. It's going more online. Experiential is being more and more valued, which it should be, right? The experience of doing versus sitting there in a lecture hall. Technical skills in certain areas can pay back faster than doing a traditional education. So I think we have to be more open to these other ways of getting education and employing people. And retraining people. I think I talk a lot about the Midwest and what's going on. I mean, employment is a big, huge component of that. Having jobs, that's a sense of dignity and pride to have a job to feed your family, your, whomever, right? So being able to solve for that is very important. And so you have to expand how you are employing and retraining people and give them other types of benefits to get there. So I look at it, we're in a transition period. Mm-hmm. We're in a transformation period because technology is changing how we do that. I don't even know what kind of jobs, to be honest with you, are going to exist 10 years from now.
Exactly.
So I think being flexible, staying positive, evolving with this is important.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we touched upon all the different careers you've had. Is there a certain mindset or a certain way of thinking that you've developed over the years that has provided the positivity and motivation, perseverance that students or other employees can take?
Yeah,
and implement into their own lives?
I think it comes down to saying, what do I value? And then the way I stay positive is through my faith, through my values. I stay around positive people. I read a lot in terms of mindset and in fact, the book The Power of Positive Thinking, to me, that's like the mantra. What you believe will eventually be what your life is about. I really believe that. If you believe it's going to be negative, it will be negative. If you believe it's going to be positive, it will be positive.
It may not.
It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. I really believe it. But it does not happen overnight. You have to believe it before you see it. And then you have to work at it over and over again and have the faith and belief that it will happen over time. It's the long run. It's not the short run. And so that's, I think, what's hard today is that we have instant TV, we have Instagram, we have instant gratification, which is not the reality, right? Mm-hmm. So if patience is something I think that we've lost in this whole social media. Mm-hmm. I think we've lost patience, and patience is the way that things occur. That really is. When you look at a child that goes from infant to adulthood, it's a lifetime.
Exactly. So you're not born and the next day you're 80.
No, and even when you plant a seed for a flower, mm-hmm. it takes. You know what I mean? It takes time. Yeah. So if you can learn that patience and still stay positive and still continuously work towards it, I think you'll be amazed at what can happen. So, but also that being positive is a practice.
Right. Speaking of practices, are there any daily routines or rituals that you've done, throughout your work time that you've been able to keep in order to prosper and take on such big challenges?
Oh, I definitely, I meditate, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. It's not this huge, full-blown, It's just meditate and stay positive.
It's like you said, be patient. It's not something that's
just staying positive, appreciating what I have. Mm-hmm. I appreciate and being thankful for what you have can stay positive, because you're like, okay, I'm not seeing this, but I have this, I'm thankful to that. I have this, I'm thankful for that. And that positive attitude will permeate. People feel that, right? You don't want to be around somebody who's always, this is horrible, this is negative, this is da-da. They're always talking about everybody else. I like, you're like, why do I want to be around you? I don't need that energy, right? So that staying positive, and to me, has been very much a part of the process. Being honest with myself. I think you've heard me say in various parts of my career where I said, this isn't working, I'm going to leave, or I'm going to create something else and move on. I think being able to move on is very important. Don't get stuck. A lot of people get stuck in the same job, in the same, you know what I mean? I think that can be more detrimental to you to stick with something that you
think once you feel stuck, that's something that you need to tell yourself, it's on to the next thing?
Yeah, you have to have the courage to step out.
Right. And I guess
some people can't.
No. I guess that's something you really have to build up to, especially in college. This is like an environment where you can kind of say, okay, I'm going to do this, and if I don't like it, I'm going to switch. Or I'm going to... This
is the perfect environment to do that. To try stuff that you're like, you know what? I tried that. I didn't like it. Great. I tried it. I like it. Great. Yeah. This is the time to explore, try things. Go for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? No, really, go for it. It's an incredible opportunity. It does not take anything to call somebody for an informational interview. LinkedIn is amazing for that.
Now, if someone was to approach you for an informational interview, you would take them up on it?
Yeah, I have. In fact, I have several that I've, and it's scheduled to do, actually, yeah.
I think it's important to have that connection with your professors, because, they carry this amount of experience that they're ready to share with you. And I don't know if you've noticed, a lot of students don't take you up on that opportunity.
No, some have, which is great. We have some incredible professors here and experience that they have.
I'm starting to meet them.
Yeah. You're lucky because you're interviewing. But take advantage of them. Ask them what they liked about their jobs, what they didn't like about their jobs, how they got their job, what would you want to do? Ask them those questions. Why not? They're a free resource right here. You can go to the art department, or go to the business department, or go to the go talk to people in those groups. They're more than willing to talk to you.
And just from that, I have to think and ask, what's the next step for you?
Well, I'm at the Feliciano Business School. I'm teaching these courses. I'm helping them develop a center, which is great, focused on CSR and innovation, and really, I'm looking at what that next opportunity could be. It's funny. I'm also talking to some companies about consulting, and I just want to I feel like there's a lot of options I could pursue.
Right, exactly.
So it's a big world. Yeah, I'd love to write. With my experience, I keep saying I need to write this down. I need to write it down.
Any book in the works?
I have to figure out the time to do it. Right, everything else, but I feel like I have the opportunity to give back. I do a lot of speaking. In fact, tomorrow I'm speaking at Princeton with their supply management forum on corporate social responsibility and supply chain. I really enjoy speaking.
Were you always such a prominent speaker?
No, over the years in this role, I've had to go out more and more and speak. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that you think that's the best way to kind of get that speaking down?
Going out and speaking a lot with, on behalf of the company, or about what you do and how you do it. To share is important, right? To me, it's more about sharing, and so that maybe people can learn things that they can use too is very important.
And building a connection, so that way, maybe just after hearing you, somebody wants to go out and is inspired and take the next step.
And whatever, if I can inspire someone, that's awesome, right? Because that's what it's about.
You can give.
Yeah.
It's
thank
you so much for coming. I feel like I'm inspired now after this. I'm going to go out and hopefully I'll change the world too.
No, you will.
Yeah.